Hello, everyone. We're officially live. Welcome back to the Sunken stage. Today we have a very important and special guest with us today who's going to be doing this dive live. And for those that don't know, dive lives are 20 to 30 minute presentations about any subject. It could be about design, architecture, technology, crypto, anything that kind of revolves around the idea of the future of living or where we're marching as a society. And then this speaker, has the floor and the stage to then inspire the community, talk about their story, their work, or whatever they want to bring to the stage that they think it's valuable. And that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys are excited. And the guest that we have today is a person that needs little introduction, Nuke Goldstein. And for those that don't know, he's a co-founder, president of labs at Celsius Network. Nuke designed the technological and financial infrastructure of the rapidly scaling Celsius Network. Nuke is a seasoned software developer, architect, innovator, and entrepreneur in the cutting-edge technologies. His career ranges from image processing to AI, ITO, and blockchain. Prior to his work at Celsius Crypto Assets, leading and borrowing platforms, he designed the P2P credit protocols using distributed storage and smart contracts. And I'm sure he's going to bring a lot more into this presentation. So thank you so much, Nuke, for joining us, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Matteo. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I want to thank, first of all, to the Sunken Blimp guys for setting up this stage. This is beautiful. I really have to say, and I didn't realize I'll be such a big person on the screen. So that's me. That's the real me right there. So Mateo's introduction was a long way to say that I'm basically an engineer. I've been in the software engineer. I've been in the field for a few decades in various fields, AI, etc. And I started several companies. My original background is in defense and intelligence. And I found myself in crypto in 2017 when I joined Celsius as a co-founder. And it's been a heck of a ride. In just a very short years, we grew from zero and almost no backing to close to 2 million users. And at our peak, when crypto was at its all-time high, we actually reached $30 billion in assets. Right now, it's a little less because crypto is declined, but the growth has been phenomenal. I don't think many companies in history can show a growth like this. So it's been a roller coaster, and I've been in the midst of all of it since 2017. So next slide, please. Next slide. All right. So before we talk about Web3, I like to put things in perspective. So history doesn't repeat itself, they say, but it rhymes. So I looked a little bit online to see what was the internet like before the year 2000. And on the right, you see this is how Amazon looked like. You see all these hyperlinks. It wasn't very impressive. This is Jeff Bezos in 1997. Amazon was not a young company. It was a 4-year company. And that's how it looked like. You see that the logo is terrible, etc. But on the left, you can see a couple of things that they said about the internet. For example, a newspaper in England said that the internet may just be a passing fad. Nobody will use it, right? Paul Krugman, who is a Nobel Prize laureate, he said in 1998 that by 2005 the fax machine will win over the internet. So it's not just about people don't understand what progress is or can predict the progress. It's also that the smartest people can be wrong when predicting it. And technology usually wins. And if it's a good technology, it makes our life better, faster, more efficient. Usually you can bet on it. So next slide, please. All right. So again, in order to understand Web3, we have to understand how we got here and and then we'll understand what is Web3. But first of all, how did we get here? So the Web 1, which was a read-only web, meaning just a bunch of hyperlinks, like you saw the Amazon's picture before. The Web 1 was kind of like, it's very fluid, but they say it's 1991 to 2004. And that was the era of Netscape and early Google and Yahoo, those who remember. That's the old logo of Yahoo, by the way. And then in 2001, there was the dot-com crash, right? And people thought that was the end, and a lot of companies disappeared, and it was a terrible era for startups. We haven't seen that ever since. Well, now we're starting to see it again. But 2001 was a big cleanup, and 2004, that's when the fun really began. That's when JavaScript and Ajax and all these things became popular on web browsers. And company like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest and all these companies all these services we use were born, right? And that's the Web 2 era, which is the read-write. All this JavaScript allowed us to interact with the websites and create the social experience and so on. And then 2008 came. That's a lot of things happened in 2008. We'll talk about them in a second, but Web 3 era started in 2015, and we talk about what happened in 2015 that kind of triggered the Web 3 era. But usually when we talk about Web 3, it's about read, write, and ownership. But it's a lot more than that. We'll dive into that in a few minutes. So next slide, please. So what happened in 2008? Jumping forward a little bit. So what happened is that the financial infrastructure collapsed on us. You can blame a lot of things, but the end result was that things that we learned to trust and accept as a given, like the stability of a bank or big financial systems that existed for more than 100 years, all of a sudden, all of them failed. And that was a big problem because trust in our systems kind of evaporated. It was no longer a trustful system, and that's a big problem for economy because economy is trust. When I give you a piece of paper that says 20 on it, and you believe me that it's worth $20, and what does $20 mean? It's all a belief system. All our money or our cash system is a belief system. And in 2008, that belief system took a major hit. And I lived in Boston back there, and I saw families being evaporated. I saw people die of a heartbreak. It was really terrible era. And another thing happened is that the government decided to salvage the situation by printing money. That was the first time they started printing dollars. And they printed like, I think, $850 million. And everybody says, wow, that's terrible. You inject so much money into the system. I mean, we have to do that, but 850 million, that's a lot. Well, just so you know, that kind of triggered, hey, here's a magic bullet to every problem in the financial system, and let's inject more. And in the last couple of years, I think 80% of all the dollars in the world were printed. So it became an addiction to the governments. And guess what happens when you have something and then you increase the volume or increase the amount of that something, that the value of that something is reduced. And that's exactly what happens to the dollar. The value is reduced, and this triggers inflation. Don't believe anything else they say. It's not Putin, it's not Corona, it's printing of money. And then the value goes down, the dollar is debased, and guess what happens next? So next slide, please. Another big thing happened in 2008, huge, not a coincidence, but a pretty remarkable thing. The Bitcoin white paper was released. And the Bitcoin paper under the name, the writer was Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who it is, if it's a guy, a girl, if it's a team of people, we have no clue. If it's a time traveler, etc. So we don't really know. But the biggest thing that Satoshi Nakamoto provided us is not the blockchain. That's a misconception. The blockchain was actually invented in the 90s. It's a technology and it's mathematics, but what Satoshi invented is the ability to do all a cash system in a decentralized way, in a peer-to-peer way. In a peer-to-peer way, meaning we don't need a central entity to move cash, to create a financial system, which is a remarkably difficult idea to do. Actually, I'm a software engineer and software scientist, and until Satoshi came up with this solution, which I'll explain in a second, we thought that this was a problem that cannot be solved in software. Because when you give somebody some piece of digital information, there is no 100% bulletproof way to make sure that he doesn't copy that information. In the case of money, that breaks money immediately, even if it's 1 in a billion, right? What Satoshi invented is a way to do it, a way to create consensus based on what's called proof of work. So he basically applied to software a physical stake in the game. So, and the theory that he introduced in the Bitcoin paper was that if somebody has something to lose, in the case of Bitcoin, it's energy and computing power, they have no incentive to break the system. And as that system grows in scale, it becomes the most safe and secure system in the world. And what happened next is that it actually proved it. Bitcoin since 2009, that's when Satoshi released the first version of the Bitcoin system, the miners. Bitcoin never got hacked, never lost a moment. No money was lost in the Bitcoin blockchain. You know, when you hear about scams and hacks, these are on exchanges and services around it. But the blockchain itself, the infrastructure was never broken, which is amazing. Trillions of dollars moved in and out, right? So that was a big deal. That was a level 9 earthquake within the financial system that was immediately followed by a level 9 earthquake in the technology and the financial or the digital financial system. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next thing that happens is 2015. That was another pivotal moment. What happened in 2015 is that one of the Bitcoin core developers, a 19-year-old kid, his name is Vitalik Buterin, invented Ethereum. And Ethereum introduced something new to the world. Ethereum introduced the smart contracts, the ability to run software on the blockchain, not just to move coins around. And that opened a whole new world of innovation and ability to do things software level on a blockchain. So let me just say that when I as a software developer, I can learn Solidity, which is the language that runs on Ethereum. I can take a couple of hours, write a piece of software, and I can release it on the Ethereum blockchain, and nobody can stop it. That software is there forever and ever. And I'll add to that software can manage and move money, coins. So I created a financial software that nobody can touch if I did it right. Nobody can stop it. Nobody can regulate it. No country can say, hey, this is a bad software, do not use it. Nobody can tell you not to use it. If I allowed you in the software to use it, you will use it. This is a very powerful thing. Never in the world something like that existed that has no boundaries, no limitations, and includes a financial infrastructure built in. And so it opened a new era of a lot of things that happened afterwards. Next slide, please. So things like, let's say, ICOs and NFTs and DeFi and DAOs and more and more, names. And I'll explain some of them. But this is the world that started Web3. And all these things, there's companies and individuals that are kind of starting to use them, like Celsius, like my company. So my company, just in a sentence, we provide financial services. We're not a bank, because in the US or anywhere in the world, to become a bank is a very long, tedious, highly regulated process. But when you use crypto, those regulations don't exist. So we came with very good intentions, meaning we said, okay, there's a new financial system. We are going to provide people the ability to, for example, have a savings account or something similar to a savings account. So when I was young, when I was a teenager, I could work hard, wash dishes, put my money in the bank, and that bank will pay me 6, 7, 8% on my money. The inflation was not that high, so I knew exactly what my buying power of that money. This does not exist anymore. It doesn't. The banks pay us 0.1% on our bank account. So we decided to fix that, and we use crypto. We now support about 50 plus coins and tokens, and we know how to generate yield of these tokens, and we pay you every Monday. You wake up and you get an email says, hey, congratulations, your Bitcoin just generated more Bitcoin for you. Your Ethereum generated more Ethereum for you. We also provide things like loans. So let's say you don't want to part with your Bitcoins, but you need cash to buy a house, to open a business, to get married, whatever. You can take a loan in a few hours. There's no credit score. There's no collection. Very easy, very simple. So these things couldn't happen before all of this on the left existed, because we now have new tools to provide new solutions to people around the world. We didn't even limit ourselves to one country or one locality. We just open it up. We have 160 plus countries, people around the world, I think all continents, using Celsius as an alternative banking solution. We're going to add the credit card soon, et cetera, et cetera. So the reason I'm telling all of you is that this new world creates new opportunities, not just to individuals who want to say, hey, I want to use decentralized finance. I'm going to be very rich because I'm very smart and I can use DeFi. DeFi is very, very hard to do. And it's not for everyone. If you want to provide crypto financials to billions around the world, you need to have someone, a centralized company that has a CEO and a CTO and pays taxes and answers the regulator, to kind of provide a cover on top of this decentralized world. But other things have happened, not just banking or DeFi. We also had ICOs. So let me explain that really, really quick. So in 2015, when Ethereum was born and we could do software on the blockchain, one of the things we could do, which was a very interesting thing to do, is build a ledger inside of the blockchain. So those of you who understand what the blockchain is, just a big spreadsheet, right? Like any bank. What is a bank? I give you $100. The bank writes, hey, Nuke just lost $100, add $100 to you. That's all the ledger does, right? So the blockchain does the same thing, but what if I create a piece of software that says, hey, here's another coin, here's another type of coin, and I manage that ledger inside a piece of software, right? What I just described to you are tokens. When people talk about tokens, it's just another coin that lives inside the blockchain that has its own coin, which is ETH in this case. So it's a very weird world. But the next thing that happens is even weirder and more interesting is that people said, hey, I create my own token. Now I can fund my company, my idea, my protocol, my project by offering the world my own economy, right? And I'll open it for sales and people will buy my token if they believe in my white paper, my project, my demo, whatever. And that will give me a way to fund my project. And these were ICOs, initial coin offerings. And that was a big deal in 2016, 17, 18. NFTs. We all love NFTs. You know, we probably have some NFTs floating in this room. NFT is the same as a token, but instead of a fungibility, meaning $1 is equal $1, one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, etc., NFT are unique. It's just a piece of digital information that cannot be replicated, has a unique identity, and possibly its own value. So, you know, one day NFTs can do more than just pictures. You know, real estate, we're talking about real estate, but not just that. There is a new term I'm going to reveal to you. Some of you never heard it. A new term that came a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, I can't remember. Soul tokens. Tokens that are bound to you and cannot be transferred. Imagine that, you know, that could be your identity. They could be your private key. You know, you can program it maybe. And I'm just brainstorming here. Maybe you can program that if something happens to you and you cannot use your brain, your soul token moves to your next in kin, your loved ones, right? And that opens the wallet with it, etc. So you never lose the funds. But one thing I want to mention here is that another real world problem was solved with all of this, and that's ownership. And we'll talk about ownership in a second, but this is a big deal because when my parents grew up, you could pretty much buy a house, pay up the mortgage pretty quickly, and own the house or piece of land or something that they can inherit to their kids and leave behind them. Most of the people right now own nothing. Absolutely nothing. What do we own? iPhone? That breaks. It's transitory. A car? That breaks as well. We don't own a house, right? It belongs to the bank for the next 30 years, if we ever can pay it back. We don't even own our money when we give it to the bank. You think you own your money? Try to pull it out. Try to move it to, I don't know, Iran. Can you do that? No, because it's not your money. You don't have control over it. If you don't believe me, ask people in Cyprus. In 2014, I believe, Cyprus had financial problems and they decided to take the money. It was part of the money from the accounts. People lost their funds. If you don't believe that, ask people in Canada recently who demonstrated against the government, and the government decided, hey, we're going to freeze their bank accounts because we don't like what they're saying about us. So you don't even own your money. What do we own? Nothing. When Bitcoin came and NFTs came and crypto came to town, suddenly a whole generation can own something. I can leave my Bitcoins, and I will, all my Bitcoins to my kids. And if they're smart, they will leave it to their kids, right? So moving on, next slide, please. So what is Web3? Okay, we talked a lot about crypto and blockchains and ICOs, but we didn't mention Web3 yet. So Web3 is basically a accumulation of all the stuff we talked about. How does this affect our lives like Web2 did, like Facebook and Instagram and all this? What is it? What is Web3? So the short answer, I'll save you the long answer. The short answer, nobody knows yet. But the long answer is we're starting to see. We're starting to figure it out. Next slide, please. So before we understand or describe Web3, let's try to define it. So we talked about ownership and privacy. So ownership, yeah, I can now own stuff. It's in my wallet. I have the private key. No government, no bank can dig into my private wallet unless they get the private key. Please do not share it with anyone. It's yours. It's yours to keep, forever and ever and ever. And privacy, it's my wallet can be my identity. My identity is not known to anyone. I'm just a number in the space. Like right now, I can see all these avatars, but I don't know really who you are. That's privacy. Transparency and open source. So a big change that the blockchain brought is that it's all open. It's out in the public. Ask any bank now, what do you do with my money? When I work hard, I put my money in the bank, what happens to it? You will not know. Spoiler alert, they make a lot of money off your money. Don't believe it, but it's very, very opaque. It's so opaque that actually they don't teach it in most schools, right? They teach kids how to brush their teeth. They don't teach them what a credit card is, right? This is by design. What did the Web3 change? What did crypto change? Transparency. It's all out in the open. We can follow the transactions. We can know exactly what's going on. And everything is open source. So this is kind of a very interesting piece of that, open source. Because when I grew as an engineer, when I started my career, open source was considered a very socialist thing. I'm contributing. I'm not going to make any money of it. I'm going to make a name for myself if it's good, but there's no direct monetary payment for my open source software, my contribution. In crypto, this is the opposite. If I want to make money, if I want to create a project and a token that is worth anything, it better be completely open source, otherwise nobody will use it. So open source got a whole new meaning in Web3. Democracy, decentralization. Well, they still don't allow us to vote on the blockchain. Guess why? Decentralization. Well, why, politics right now basically doesn't allow people to do things, right? On the blockchain, there is no limitation by location, by gender. The blockchain doesn't care. It doesn't care where you live. Doesn't care if you're a Jew or a Muslim. Doesn't care if you're black or white. Doesn't care if you're young or old. The blockchain, we are all equal. So this is the mathematically controlled democracy. And then we talked about crypto and token-based economy. So all of this, we have our own economy to run it. So economy is kind of the engine that runs society. So all of this is now run by its own economy, by a token-based economy that I described before. So it's a really new world. It's very, very goofy. It's very, very hard to understand, amorphous almost. So imagine you're a company who tries to say, in 2007, when Steve Jobs came up with the iPhone, there was a mad rush. I think a bit later, when the App Store came to be in 2009, every company said, hey, I need to be mobile first. Mobile first. They had no clue what it is, and everybody was looking for mobile developers, right? Those who remember. It's kind of going to happen very soon. Every company will say, how am I Web3 compliant? What does it mean? How do I do that? So they will have to account for all of these things that are very different than what people are used to right now. So next slide, please. So here's some examples. What's better than to explain than actually real world examples, right? So this is the demo I saw in Permissionless, a conference that took place a couple of weeks ago. Lens is from a guy named Stani, who developed some of the coolest DeFi protocols. He runs this thing. The idea is a social network. He showed a demo that looked very much like Twitter, but there were a couple of differences. One is under the hood. Under the hood, it runs not as a centralized Twitter with Jack Dorsey at the helm, developers, etc., and everything that censorship, etc. There's an engine that is completely decentralized. It completely runs on a blockchain. And on top of that, they build a UI that looks very similar to Twitter. But that's the biggest difference there on the user interface is, and I found it very interesting, is that when you use it, you keep pressing a button, approve, 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 or disapprove. And that's your wallet, your MetaMask wallet, giving permission to the system to do things. And we will fix that. I mean, I hope that in the near future we'll have a better engagement, but it just shows you that in the world of Web3, it's about giving permission, not giving permission to everything. You own your data, you own your information, and you give permission to the network or the company to use it. If you compare it to the current Twitter, I put my tweets on Twitter. These tweets are not mine anymore. Twitter can do whatever they want with them. They can block me, they can use this for advertisement, they can put it in, I don't know, websites, without my permission. I lost my ownership of my tweets the moment I put it on Twitter. In this case, in the world of Web3, when I write something, it is mine, and I choose to share it with people, right? And I can monetize on it. In the future, we'll be able to monetize. Think about artists. Think about musicians. Musicians right now find it very hard to... Hold on, sorry. Apologies. Musicians now find it very hard to make a living, right? Because Spotify does not pay very well. And in the future, your music will be an NFT. That NFT will have a smart contract that will say every time somebody plays that song, some commission will go to the artist, will go to the producer, will go to the band. It will all be mathematically controlled and not by an entity that decides to abuse or monetize on the artist's work. Next slide, please. Another big mover in Web3 is gaming. And I found, I didn't know much about this, but I kind of sat with a bunch of game developers, including this game, Illuvium. That's the first AAA game that is completely decentralized, has NFTs built in. I found that this industry is growing fantastically. The technology is maturing. If you don't know, Ubisoft and Electronic Arts, EA, and all these big game producers are already in. I think some of the game engines already have NFTs built in. So what does it mean? What is Web3 and gaming? Well, imagine you buy an avatar or a sword or a gadget, and you can take it with you on different games. On one game, you have a card game, and you can use that sword in your card game. And then you move into an open world game, and you can take that sword with you. And then you can move to space or maybe some fighting game. And you take it with you. Again, ownership. In the world of software, modern software, we don't even own our software. If you don't believe me, try to move your Windows to another machine. You can. You bought that Windows, but you cannot take it to another machine. You have to buy it again. Okay? In the world of Web3, when I buy something, it is mine and I can use it everywhere. In the gaming, this is a very powerful thing. I know a company, a new startup, they spent $2.5 million to buy real estate that will host gaming game arenas. And it's very similar to this place, right? So this place is part of it. So imagine we can port the game into this beautiful arena, right? So this is a whole new world. This is something new that is coming, and it's very, very exciting. And I was really surprised how advanced the industry has become in terms of products and software and games being developed and the community around it. Really, really exciting to see that. Next slide, please. So what about commerce? What about companies like, I'm just using an example which I like because I like the brand, Nike. Okay. So Nike is selling us shoes and apparel and all kind of clothing, and they have a physical store, and they have, what my favorite is their app where I can design my own shoes and they 3D print it, and in a couple of weeks I get it in the mail. That's fantastic. But a company like that with these capabilities, what happens when they ask themselves, okay, what does it mean to become Web3 compliant? Well, the easy thing to say is, hey, just allow us to pay with MetaMask, allow us to pay with crypto, right? So that's phase one. But what about, I own my shoes, I have an NFT that represent those shoes and their design, and nobody can take it from me. This is mine, and I can move it around, and I can take it to the store and show them that. And we don't know yet. We don't know really. I mean, it's coming together. There's a lot of projects in the field of commerce looking around to see what will make Web3 and commerce live side by side. But here's the thing: it's not a sure thing yet. It's not a sure thing because it's still very elusive to convince these companies and also explain to them what to do. Things are being built right now, but we don't know yet for sure, how it will look like, 5 years from now. To me, when I look at this, I call it the Spotify moment. I know I talked a bit of crap about Spotify, but I call it the Spotify moment for crypto and Web3. And what I mean by that is that 15 years ago, when you wanted to get some music, you had basically two options. To buy music or to own music. I'm not talking about radio. If you could go to a store, Tower Records, for example, and browse for CDs, etc., and buy a CD and take it with you. Or you could go to Napster or Emule, I think, and Kazaa, and there were several peer-to-peer networks where you can practically get your illegal pirated songs, right? That was your two options. But now, most of us don't use any of that. These services, they still exist, but very, very minor. You almost cannot find a physical store for music anymore. But we use streaming, right? We use music as streaming. And you can see the same happening for video. So why did that happen? Why all of a sudden are we willing to shed $9 or $10 or $15 for a service every month? Because it's convenient. And what makes it convenient? Broadband, internet. When Tower Records existed and when we could pirate songs, the world was not ready. The technology was not there to allow streaming. When the technology was there, streaming replaced both of them. So what I suspect is Web3 will go through the similar situation. We had a recent collapse of the markets. We had a collapse of UST, which was a stable coin, an algorithmic stable coin that basically pegged to the dollar, and that went down and disappeared and took a lot of people with it. But this is all experimentation right now. We're still in the experimentation stage. At some point, we'll have that Spotify service where everybody will use Web3. It's not going to be a centralized company, I don't think, but it's going to be very, very exciting to see. I think this was the last slide. Is there another slide? All right. So if you have any questions, you can email me at nuke@celsius.network. You can follow me on Twitter and DM me anytime. That's our website. If you want to try Celsius, download the app, get some yield every Monday, get some loans. credit card coming soon. So that is it for me. I guess we thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. So if you have any questions, you can open it.
All right. Thank you so much, Nuke, for the presentation. And yes, the floor is open for questions. Seton, I think your mic is coming out a bit robotic. I'm not sure if it's just from my end or for everyone else.
Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't understand.
Oh, maybe she'll restart the stage. In the meantime, does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question. This is James Gaddis. So for someone who, might be somewhat of an outsider to this, what would you recommend as a, what's your approach to getting to learn this and becoming involved and then I feel like transitioning into this and not being left behind, essentially?
Yeah. Yeah, the beautiful thing about all of this that it's very, very open and accessible to anyone. It's really up to you. Pick it up. You don't need to pay anyone. You don't need to be an insider. All you need to do is two things. Get yourself some coins. Start with what we call the blue chips, which are Bitcoin, Ethereum, just a little bit. And by the way, you don't have to spend $30,000 on a Bitcoin. You can spend $1 on a Bitcoin and buy. It's denominated by what we call satoshis. So buy yourself a little bit, just to get comfortable. The next thing is learn about what is a private key. What is a MetaMask wallet? What is a hardware wallet? You can buy yourself a Trezor or whatever. So first, get comfortable with owning crypto. The second thing you can do is go on Google, on YouTube, and just Google, Bitcoin tutorial or Web3 tutorial. And start reading, and I'm a very visual guy, so I like to watch videos. Tons and tons of content. Tons and tons of content. And that will get you started. Once there, you'll go down the rabbit hole very quickly.
Thank you. One last question for you. Do you see a way to integrate smart contracts and NFTs and DAOs into the medical industry, the healthcare industry?
Absolutely. So it's funny you say that because recently I had some exams and I read, for the first time in my life, I started reading the paperwork they're giving me. And in the paperwork says, hey, we're going to take your information, we're going to use it for marketing, we're going to monetize on it. That's what it says there. And I went there and said, what if I don't sign it? He said, you don't sign it, you don't get treatment. And I said, what the heck? I don't want you guys to monetize on my data. So the first thing I can say, very easy for me, is once people start to understand what privacy and ownership of data means, and they will demand the medical industry to be more careful with their data, to ask for permission, not to use the data, instead to ask for ownership of the data. That's number one. But it also allows me to transport my data. Right now, if I want to change doctor, I need to go to the first doctor and say, please send my data, my information to the other doctor. And then I need to sign documents for that. What if I just say, hey, doc, here's my, here are my documents. It's on my wallet. So that's one, ownership and all that. There's a lot of layers in every industry, including that, in terms of how communication, transactions between corporates and consumers are done under the hood. So there's many, many layers on how this technology and this approach will be used in the medical industry as well.
Thank you.
Nuke, I had a question as well. James asked about the how to get started. And one thing that came to mind is, of course, the YouTube, Google goes a long way. But at least for me, I like to be part of groups or somewhat of a community, right? That is always sharing stuff as well. So I would like to ask someone that is getting started and wants to be involved in all, what are good other communities, even besides Celsius, that would be nice to be part of, to be part of this and learning and all.
Community is a huge part. If you remember my first slide, community first. Community is a big part of Web3. And community can be a lot of things. It could be around the technology, let's say a blockchain. It could be around a product like Celsius. It could be a local community. We're working here in Tampa Bay. I live in Tampa, Florida. We're working very hard to make Tampa Bay a crypto community. This is a big word in crypto and Web3 because it's about trust. When we act as a community, we have a shared interest to protect each other and work toward a common goal. What community one can join as an outsider really depends. I think once let's say you use Bitcoin and you use other coin and you say, look, to me it sounds like Bitcoin that's a granddaddy. I think this one is like, that's what I want to support. I want to support Bitcoin. You, my friend, just became what we call a Bitcoin maximalist. And it's a whole big group of maximalists. You can seek them out on Discord or Telegram, Twitter, many ways to look at them. But that was just an example. You join the Celsius community. We call our community Celsius. Very, they have each other back. So if you have a problem, if for some reason you encounter some problem, these guys will jump and help. Just to show you how different crypto communities from previous communities is that my mom worked in a bank for 20 years or so. And I've never seen any customer go to help in their booth or say anything about them. It's just a service, right? It's just someone service. There's no emotional connection to the bank, right? At Celsius, where we provide crypto banking, our community travels to conferences, sometimes out of pocket, to just volunteer in our booth and advocate and wear our shirts and help us manage the booth. I've never seen that ever before crypto. So communities are really strong. Again, you can you need to kind of educate yourself first, kind of dip your feet into the community. You have to be careful too. There's a lot of bad guys. There's a lot of scammers. Don't ever give your private keys to anyone. Your private key is your life. That's like giving your DNA to someone. Okay? It's worse than giving your DNA. It's giving your whole life in crypto to someone. So don't ever be duped. Nobody will send you, 2 Bitcoins if you send them one. So just be careful.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Any more questions, guys?
Hi, sorry, I have a question. You hear me well?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm curious to know what are the key points or key for you to overcome in order to reach widespread adoption of crypto.
Yeah.
What do you think are
So, widespread adoption of crypto as opposed to widespread adoption of Web3. I want to separate them. So crypto does have enemies, right? It does have people who are trying to prevent crypto from succeeding. My individual opinion is that they're fighting water. I don't think they can win. It's like, if I go back to the peer-to-peer music sharing technologies, if you recall, there was something called the Pirate Bay. And they kept shutting down the Pirate Bay, keeps popping up in another place because they couldn't shut down the protocol, the peer-to-peer protocol. Same with crypto, and we've been there before. China tried to ban crypto several times, including a very sweeping effort to kick the miners out. And guess what happened to Bitcoin the next day? It went up. So China, the second largest economy in the world, decided they don't want Bitcoin, and Bitcoin just got stronger out of this. So, there will be pushback from regulators, from governments. They don't get it, and I get it. I understand why. I mean, they have a very hard job to do, and I don't envy them. This is a new technology, very hard to control technology. They're used to control. They're used to certain parameters that made their job possible, and crypto makes it very, very hard to do. So, pushback from governments and regulators could slow things down, but it won't stop it. The other thing is that we have we are still in an experimental phase. As we saw, the coin that crashed, UST Luna, took about 50 or 60 billion dollars in value with it. A lot of people got burned, very, very sad. They basically lost their money. This is way bigger than what happened in 2008 with the Lehman Brothers in terms of amount of money that got wiped out, right? Yet crypto is still here. Bitcoin is still here. Ethereum is still here. A lot of the projects are here. A lot of the other stable coins are still here with us. So that will not stop crypto. It will slow it down. It does. And the third, I think this is the most complicated piece, is Web3. And how will we define it in a way and make it accessible in a way that commerce, that corporations, not just people, users, but corporations will adopt Web3 technologies, Web3 mindset. That's where the hard work is just beginning. I think we're still a few years away from that. But at some point, every corporation will have to say, okay, I have to be Web3 compliant, and we'll hire the right developers to make them Web3 compliant. But we need to figure out, what does that sentence mean, right? And is it something that will benefit that organization, that corporation? So a lot of unanswered questions. We haven't won the war, but we're winning the battles one by one, that's for sure. All right. Thank you everyone. That was fun. We'll do this again in season 2, right, Matthias?
Yes, of course. Yes, it would be a pleasure having you here again. And this was so great. Thank you so much, Nuke. I hope everyone enjoyed it as well. And then, well, it goes without saying, if you guys have any more questions or any comments for Nuke afterwards, he has his, information up there, and also on the Suncom Blimp Discord channel. We can continue the discussion there. So yes, warm round of applauses for Nuke. And until next time, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.